Welcome, educators, parents, and scholar gamers to the Academy of Esports, Episode 15, Interview with Tom Turner. I'm your host, James O'Hagan. This is the podcast where I delve into topics surrounding esports and education. Esports are organized competitive video games, allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We cannot forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. In this episode, I interviewed Tom Turner, the Director of STEM Health Sciences, Orange County Department of Education, and part of the North American Scholastic Esports Federation. The Federation is an organization combining esports, academic research, philanthropy, and schools. With that, I present to you my interview with Tom Turner. Welcome, everybody. I'm here with Tom Turner. Tom is with the Orange County Department of Schools, and he is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction and specifically oversees STEM. Tom, thanks for being here. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And the purpose of our conversation is that Orange County has done some pretty remarkable things in a very short time around the field of esports in education. And I think that what you guys are doing, first off, I want to say that you guys are doing, I believe, is fantastic work. I think you're doing very forward-thinking work. And you've got a pretty unique setup going there. Why don't you give us just a kind of an overview of what you have going in Orange County?
Well, the whole thing started just over a year ago. I'm kind of lucky with some of the partners that we have in the community here. But we were called into a meeting by Gerald Solomon of the Samuel A. Foundation. And the Samuel A. Foundation, the thrust of their work really has been around promoting STEM learning and STEM workforce in Orange County and throughout the country, actually. But, the foundations here in our neighborhood, we do a lot of work with them, come to this meeting to talk about esports and STEM learning. And at that time, over a year ago, I really didn't know what esports was. But at the table, I have UC-I, part of their esports team, as well as some of their researchers. And this thing kind of morphs. This project becomes creating a league, a high school league, which I know that there are leagues out there that students can join. But this was one that allowed kids to really just play esports with the name of their school on their back, which was different and something that we hadn't seen before. But we scrambled and we put this thing together with the help of UCI's esports group. So they have, I'm sure people are familiar with UCI and their esports program, but they just won the national championship in League of Legends, and so we have their technical assistance crew. We have their managers and everything working with us to tell us how to do this, how to put it together. They're running all of the logistics behind the scenes, answering questions, really, like I said, legitimizing us in the space. And we got 28 schools signed up in less than a month.
Wow.
Which is kind of, it's crazy. How
many students?
Well, we had 35 teams. Some schools had more than one team.
Wow.
Then you end up with 5 kids on a League of Legends team, plus all of the other ones who were involved in the club that surrounds the team. So that gives you a couple hundred kids that are just playing right there, let alone those who are involved peripherally on their teams. So we're doing all that, but like I said, this was about learning. I work for the Department of Ed. My job is to try to, think of innovative ways that STEM can reach kids in different ways. And so the conversation was really around, if every kid basically is playing some sort of version of an e-sport, is there a way we can connect STEM learning to that? And that's where, like you talked about some of the partnerships that are unique in our organization. You have the people like Dr. Mimi Ito, Katie Salins, Constance Steinkuhler, Kurt Squire. You have all of these experts who've been video game and learning researchers for years, and they're top dogs. All of them are just incredible. And now we're working with them, and they're telling us how, sports and learning, there's all of these research studies that show, there's higher GPAs for students and personal growth for those who are involved, affiliation with school, all of these things that exist for sports and learning. And we know a lot about video games and learning. We know that, visual acuity, scientific reasoning, literacy, all of these things are increased for students who play video games in regards to their learning. But we don't know a lot about esports and learning. So that was kind of the charge. So we go forward. There's a research study with UCI as they start to look at these schools that are participating in the league. We're putting together the whole idea of a club aspect, so not just the player themselves, but everybody else that surrounds those who do play. So they could be kids who are putting together video pieces that show what's happening with the team, or writing something for the school news, or updating a website, or doing some fan art, all of the other kind of skills that are surrounding that group of players. Then they're looking at all of this and trying to figure out, now, is there some sort of learning that's happening with esports? And then, a lot of what I'm doing then is creating a curriculum. And we then wrote a 4-year curriculum to replace traditional high school English, and we got that approved out here in California. We have a school that's piloting that in full this fall, and then others who are going to take pieces of that and put them into an English course, just units here and there this year to see about piloting in fall of 2019. So all of that's really a lot. It's kind of crazy. It happened in a short amount of time. And now we're just trying to just get out there and recruit more schools to get involved. Everything we do is free. There's no charge to participate, and that's part of what the Samuelis believe in, is free education and equity. And we're just trying to promote this and provide this opportunity for as many students and schools around the country, and community-based organizations as well.
So just to put it in perspective for people who may be listening for the first time, because I know there's probably an Orange County in Florida too. This is Southern California, right?
Yes, it is.
And you guys are like right in the hub of where Riot Games, Blizzard, UC-Irvine,
Activision, UCI, they're all within an hour of where I live. Blizzard is 10 minutes that way, UCI is 10 minutes that way.
Yeah, so you guys are really in a great spot to not just connect kids into gaming in schools, but also start to connect them into industry as well too, right? Has industry been involved very much with this?
Yeah, so again, this is the benefit of working with UCI. They are tight with Blizzard and Riot. They play Overwatch, they play League. So they have those connections there. As we started to go through this, you really can't run a league unless you have their approval. And that's for obvious reasons. It's their intellectual property. So we have been working with them in order to just make it smooth for the student experience. If you play a game that costs money, can we get a copy of that for free? Can we get a version of the game that is easier for everybody in the IT areas in our districts to be able to work with?
Oh, yeah.
So they've been good for those things. And we hope that we can tighten up our partnerships with them moving forward.
Yeah, I know that one of the struggles that a lot of our students here in Racine have is, and in Rockford when I was there, was, for example, in a game like League of Legends that requires you to build your character, you've got to build your account, and you have to, and the term is grinding, where you're just playing matches to up your level of skill so you can get access to other players. Characters that you can play. I know that there are certain ways, and I've seen even PC studios that allow you to have an open, like every character is available to you based on that location. And I think that's something that education, if you're starting to think about this in the school sense, is, as you said, you want to reach out to Riot, you want to reach out to Blizzard and say, hey, we're thinking of forming a league, we need help. Have they been reciprocal to, outside of you guys being so close, have you heard of them being reciprocal to other organizations or schools as they start to go down this path themselves?
Yeah, I think they're interested. Obviously, part of this is just building a consistent customer base for them, of course.
Sure.
And so they're receptive to that for sure. I don't deal always directly with the publishers, but from the meetings that we've had and the way that we ran League last year, they did give us that open version that allowed our students to participate in using all of the different characters within the game.
Nice. Now, tricky question for you, because your focus is education, curriculum, and instruction. I work in my role here at the Racine Unified School District. I'm director of virtual learning, but I also work with the curriculum and instruction team very closely. Did you run into those people who looked at you funny when you said, hey, we're going to do this esports thing, and they gave you weird looks and they pushed back and said, wow, what do you mean video gaming in schools? That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. No, we ran into that quite a bit, and we expected that. When we first pitched this to adults. See, that's the great thing. So you have something good for a school when the students are on board. You don't have to explain it to them at all, right?
Right.
And so the first presentation we actually did on this, after we came up with all of these things that I talked about, was the ICE, which is the Illinois. It's their version of Q.
Right. Illinois Computing Educators. I used to be a member. Yes.
Yes, right. So it's the Illinois version, and we get hold of them and we virtually present to them. And so it's this webcam where we're looking then at the audience and these wonderful educators in Illinois. And here we are. We're actually at the Honda Center where the Ducks play for some student things, kids screaming in the background, and we're trying to present. But here are a handful of high school students who are attending this ICE conference there, which is incredible that students are allowed to attend this. And as we're explaining what esports is and how kids are really involved and engaged in this, you see them in the front nodding like, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Where in the back, the adults in the room like me, would be raising their hands saying, so now exactly how is it that we're going to really just promote video games in school? So yes, there was some of that pushback, and you did have to explain what it was, that it's not just us playing Donkey Kong back in the day, that this is actually a digital platform where kids meet, where they socialize, where they collaborate. Gerald Solomon of the Samuel Foundation talks about the soda fountain and a concert or a mall. We don't necessarily do that as people anymore. If you had to explain to my grandmother that people meet online and date because that's how they meet, that would be a foreign concept to her. But that's what kids do now. My 10-year-old plays Clash Royale on my phone, but he chats with people online as a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what this generation does. And we should empower that and then embrace it and try to find ways to take advantage of showing them that the skills that they learn just by participating in this can be something that they can do perhaps in the workforce later on in life.
Yeah, even this past weekend, my son is 10 years old, and he wants to play Fortnite with me. And he lives with his mother most of the time. And one of the things that we were really working on in that over the weekend was just an issue we had with the Xbox, and you couldn't go multi-platform. You had to do same platform. I mean, we were digging into like system settings, network settings, account settings. We were testing things out. And it was like this experience of just this high level intensive like research that took place. And like I think he learned more about networking and computers, and like not just that, but his privacy settings. I said, I'm not really sure I'm comfortable with you having these private, changing your privacy settings too much. And it opened a door for a conversation. So as an adult, not looking at this from the realm of an educator, but from a parent, all of a sudden I'm having this really excellent conversation about why you need to be safe online with kids. It was fantastic.
Right. And we saw the same thing then with League of Legends playing this last spring, because we have a coach who is an expert in the game who through UCI and their connected learning system, they were able to then provide this person virtually to all of our teams last year. And you do have then an adult who works with the students, who's kind of your teacher, your club rep. You know how that goes on the high school campus, which are these wonderful adults who give their time to do this. But they would then analyze the game, and so a lot of kids were playing League, but they weren't doing it at a level where they were having a coach, this adult, these teammates within the room that they consistently saw over and over again, where they had to not go to that area of tilt, right, where they were having the self-management, but they were also then had little homework assignments where they were looking at screen caps and reporting back on what they saw. So these unprompted organic moments of collaboration and connection that we can say is really what STEM learning and what 21st century skills really are.
Now you alluded to it a little earlier, and you've kind of brought it back to those other connections. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about those curricular connections, because to me, I've always said that if you just focus on the gaming, you lose out on a much bigger opportunity here. So you've got all these engaged kids, 35 teams, you said, 5 kids a team, plus you got to have some other kids doing some other things. And then you're starting to pilot curriculum that ties into this. So there's going to be a lot of educators who go, oh, come on, you can't have video games as the curriculum.
Right. Well, but this is one of those truly integrated curricular moments. And I think we all, so a director, and I oversee the STEM unit here, and of course it's all about integrated curriculum, right? How do we make all of these STE, or you can add the arts, I know that whole thing. We put this all together in some way that is real world connected and highly engaging, and you want that. That's that type of educational moment that we all seek as teachers and people who work with students. So taking the idea of esports as that's the vehicle, right? That's the high interest activity. And then if you can pull it back and look at English language arts standards, ISTE tech standards, the social emotional learning standards, NGSS science standards. So you can take all of these, which are very technical, and kids never want to hear about them, but as an educator, you want to make sure that in order for a course to be authorized, to be taught, that's worth the while of students to sit there, that parents can be proud that their kids achieved something in this course. Well, the class has to meet certain requirements. And so we got English teachers in a room, and we put these, the career technical ed teachers in a room, and we said, here's what our plan is. This is our vision. We did this at UCI, which was really cool when we built the curriculum. We then had some of the UCI scholarship players come down and just hang out and answer questions. And the cool thing was, beyond the fact that these were just great kids coming in and talking to a bunch of novices, but there were some actual esports experts in the room, and one of the players comes in and everybody kind of gasps, like, oh, is that young kid over there? And it turns out that this kid is some world-renowned league player who's the nicest guy in the world, of course. And so that's the type of interactions we're having as we're writing this course. And you can kind of see the buzz about esports just among those who understand it and seeing the players come in the room. But then the courses themselves, which are available for everybody to look at, they're on the website. Esportsfed.org is our website. But they're also available on the University of California Office of the President website, which is where the courses get approved in California, they get vetted, and then they're kind of published through them.
Okay.
But they're English courses. But instead of reading Shakespeare, and there's nothing wrong with Shakespeare, but maybe you'll read Ready Player One, and your writing might not necessarily be about picking apart a character analysis from The Grapes of Wrath, but it might be about character analysis in a game, and what does that character mean, and how do they function within the society of the game itself, or the culture of the team that you're playing with. So they are relevant, and they do hit the standards, and they were approved. And when you start to step back and look at it as an educator that way, it does make more sense.
And a lot of games, and I think this started maybe with the Final Fantasy or even the Legend of Zelda series. The concept of the hero quest. I mean, there's a hero quest in a variety of the great games. Not so much like a Pac-Man game or Donkey Kong, because there's never it's always going. But I remember, Final Fantasy VII was probably the first game that I played end to end that was like this immersive story with like fantastic art and just great storytelling. And even today, what's funny is my own children know Final Fantasy VII. They know The Legend of Zelda. And it wasn't that I had to say, hey, you're going to sit here and play this game. It was like, this is just part of mythology in our day and age. So it's really connecting in those things. And just, as you're saying, it's just like, you're not going to just have to read Shakespeare. Let's look at some other texts and contexts so we can really build this STEM thing. Because I know there's a lot of districts that do struggle with how do we bring in these STEM concepts into these traditionally non-STEM fields.
Yeah, right. And we see that with robotics and coding. Those are big movements, and they're popular. And there are real world connections. And you see first graders who are using Scratch coding, and that's pretty cool. And they create their sprite and they do something with it. And that's amazing. But then to pull it back and add so much more content to it in an entertaining way. I was at the IGEC conference, I believe it's called, out in Irvine, which is when I heard your name mentioned actually in the room.
Hey.
But the moderator of this panel, he started talking about how gaming really is it's like the entertainment for the next generation, and it's sort of overtaking movies and television in the way that the art is so spectacular in the games these days, the way that the stories are written and the quests that you have to go on as a character, and of course those are so entertaining and so enriching and involving. And of course, not only do we play the games, but then we go on Twitch and then we watch people play the games, which is a whole different movement, right? And the New York Times writes about people going online and watching others play games, watching people play Fortnite and watching people play Overwatch. And that's what we're doing for entertainment these days, and how culturally that's so huge. But then again, where are the connections to learning? I mean, back to that for me. And are we able to kind of fulfill that prophecy that we're looking for here?
And gosh, you said there was something you hit on really quickly, and I'll remember it. I'll remember when I come back to it. I'm sure it'll hit me again. But one of the questions I did have too is, what impacts have you seen so far with your students?
Well, this is, again, through the great work of Dr. Steinkuhler over at UC-I, and she had some people out doing field studies, so they were doing some observations of teams playing, they did some focus groups, some interviews, and they saw that students really, we saw a lot with the social emotional learning portion of it, that social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making, conflict resolution, and those are big deals. And so students becoming more introspective and realizing, especially if you're playing closely and in person with friends or with classmates, school colleagues, that's important because it happens within the realm of the game, but it also happens outside of that room where they're actually participating. We also saw, like I said, some of those organic, unprompted moments of learning, whether that's, I'm going to create this website for my team. You might have an adult, like we talked about the coaches and the GMs, they might task you with doing something where, you are analyzing part of the team or part of the game itself. But some then, of course, because that's what the generation of students do these days, they just go and they make their own mini movies, and then they put them up on the school news, which every morning is broadcast throughout all the different classrooms. And so they were seeing all these things. But if you look at what that means as far as actual skills, we saw problem solving, we saw argument, we saw synthesizing information. I mean, all of these different standards were being hit just in this kind of informal field observations that were taking place. And then they will chase more of that this year. That group will further their research, and again, they're being funded generously through the Sam Lilly Foundation to continue to see if we can find these really strong correlations between the esports and the actual learning itself.
That's fantastic. I as you were speaking, I did remember my question, and it ties into your statements that you made. You said something about, people go and watch people play video games now. And I was born in 75, so I was a child of the 80s and the 90s. And I remember just going to a friend's house. I'm a terrible video gamer. I love video games, but I'm awful at it. Yeah. But I would sit there and watch him play games for hours. It was just I was sitting with him while he was playing the game. If we had something like Twitch, I probably would have also done that. And tying that into this, because you talked about kids creating movies and really getting engaged in this, do you have any research? And if you don't, I would love for you to maybe communicate this with UCI, because we have talked about this being a way to engage kids who normally aren't engaged. Is this the first time for some of these kids that they've participated in an extracurricular? Do you have any data around that? Because I just want to reiterate for the audience, the data will say, and this is something that has been spoken about before, is if you get, on average, 80% of your kids participating in after-school extracurricular activities, things like that, your GPAs are going to go up. You're going to have a minimum of 3.0. Attendance is going to go up. So have you engaged those kids who weren't engaged before?
Yes. So we heard anecdotals about that, about students who had no affiliation with school, kind of that disenfranchised student who, and believe it or not, there are many kids who are bored in high school. Right? That is no shock.
Yeah.
And if there are any students out there listening, they are nodding their head, agreeing. And this did give them something that spoke to them. And maybe they weren't, the kid who was going to be on the football team, or this was not the girl who was going to play on the softball team, or were not involved in any of the performing arts. But this gave them something that they could be proud of, and something that was talked about at school. This made it on the morning announcements. And we heard about one school where the students who played on the league team were more popular around school than the football players. I don't know how true that is, but that's a pretty cool statement, because it gave them that investment into the school, and now they kind of saw themselves as kind of the fabric of the culture of school, and hopefully can kind of see themselves going beyond that. But we heard a couple other little anecdotals, and so we did have a live final at the end. This was all played online as these things are, but we did have a live event over 2 separate weekends at the Santa Ana Esports Arena, and then parents show up. And the parents who were not believers before, who just found their kids to be players in the room when they're supposed to be doing their homework or doing something else, now they see them up on stage and they're part of this team, and people are cheering for them, and they're achieving and getting the success. And some of them were English language learners, as we have many here in Southern California and around the country. And so these English learners now, that the parents are saying how impressed they were with how much they have grown as far as their language abilities. They're speaking better, they're reading better, and even their conversational skills have improved so much. And this is the conversation you get to have with parents, and that goes beyond just the affiliation with school. Now you have a proud mom or a proud dad talking to you about that. What's better than that?
Yeah, that's fantastic stuff. And I will say too, you talked about those kids who didn't necessarily identify with their normal, I guess we'll say normal extracurricular activities. I was that kid in high school who was 300 pounds, and it was like expected for me. I came from a family of football players. So my grandfather played football, my dad played football. So I played football. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. And if you had said to me, hey, do you want to play video games? I would have immediately turned in my helmet and given the state of what's been happening, especially with research into brain studies around CTE and how early that starts, there might be a lot more kids and families going forward who look at those kind of things, those high impact sports, and go, you know what, if my kid really loves to do this, and there's collegiate scholarships, and there's career pathways built into it, why would I invest into something that is going to possibly cause some kind of a CTE or a brain damage or something? I mean, we're in the business of developing young minds, not turning them into, whatever it is that it could be. So, sorry, that's my soapbox. I just need to...
I heard somebody, one of the forums I was at, there was that question, that are we encouraging kids to have more screen time, play even more? And one of the people responded with, we think it's okay that kids participate, boys, in football, tackle football, where research shows that there are real problems with the brain, with the head, based on participation in this. When we think that's okay. So, if we're worried about them having a little more screen time, maybe that's the lesser of two evils. But, I'm not throwing stones at students that want to participate in sports, be it football, swimming, running, any of that. It's just so great that you have the opportunity then for students, like yourself, who would have rather have played something like esports, like a video game. And if that's something that interests kids, then we should allow them to do that, and we should empower them. And like you said, if we can find the learning and then the potential workforce opportunities that come out of that, then why aren't we going after that?
Exactly. Now, everything sounds great. Have there been any roadblocks? In particular, some of the things I know that we deal with, and I think that you probably have dealt with as well, is esports is a very male-dominated environment. There are the thing that always makes the headlines is the toxicity, where there's stories out there of people who are using inappropriate words, language, in very public forums. even recently, Kotaku is a website that talked about the bro culture at even Riot Games. That is, so what have you guys done to try and bring in a more inclusive environment, I guess, for gamers? Anything in particular?
Well, I mean, one of the aspects of game choice does come down to who is attracted to this game. We played League of Legends last spring, and shocker, that turns out to be a very boy-heavy game.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that discussion after the season ended and looking at which games to play this season, and can we steer into a game that might not be as boy-heavy. We can't really announce our games yet just because we don't have our agreements put together with the developers quite yet, but we're hoping then to be able to do that. But in regards to the toxicity and hearing from somebody like Constance Steinkuhler, who is a researcher but also a gamer, a female gamer, and she talks on and on about how it's a real thing for
Mm-hmm.
girls playing online. But the advantage of what we're trying to do then by having students play in a room together, whether they're practicing or actually in an actual match, but you have an adult in there, you have a general manager, right, who's the adult in charge of this organization, or you have a coach, and they're guiding students through what's appropriate behavior. And there are expectations to play in the league. We have a code of conduct. We had to discipline students last season who were not following the code of conduct, who were being toxic players online. And the mantra, of course, is just to build a better gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to go with. That isn't necessarily directly solving the problem of girls in gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I was just at the Connected Learning Summit at MIT last week, and I was on a panel with Dr. Mimi Ito, and the same question was asked. And it's a great question. And part of it is the culture of gaming itself. And if we're looking to have 50% girls and 50% boys, that perfect parity in this activity, we may never get there just because the culture of esports right now is really not 50% women and 50% men. That's not what exists. It reflects the culture of the activity itself. But as more titles come out and as it becomes more popular, we're seeing more female gamers involved. But that's also part of the nature of what we're doing with the club aspect. So those who are not necessarily involved with the gameplay, then doing the other activities that surround the game, that's just as important. In starting this last year, we met with a couple of high school groups. How's this going to work? What do you think, doing this on campuses? Are we way off with this or are we way on? And some of the girls that were in these little focus groups, they ended up they're the event organizers. They were the streamers. They're the ones who put these things together. And we're finding that within our own group, our NASEF group, the North American Scholastic Esports Federation, which is our group, we, besides those world-class researchers we talked about, have Samantha Anton, who's really running the league and the structure behind it and making those decisions. We have, Holly Steele over here in my organization who is doing a lot of the heavy lifting as well. So these are women who are running this and doing, the bulk of the really smart, hard work. And so we're hoping even by modeling that we get more girls involved.
And also by
girls camps and things like that where we can directly target them. But, we're doing everything we can just to highlight the cool things about games and try to get more women involved.
And I'll argue that as we start to do this in schools where, as you said, there's a hierarchy, there's a structure where women are heavily involved, as you're saying, even if it's not on the front, in the visible and even on the back end, it starts to change the culture. It starts to so schools can become that place where, a kid who's 14 years old who's just playing video games, it's very different than being part of a gaming club, being a scholar gamer. And by doing so, now you're starting to say, like, well, no, this is the normal. What you're doing is not necessarily normal. What this is where everybody's working together. You're working around a common goal, a common theme. Men and women doesn't matter. It's just that and you're starting to train kids in how to really be those good digital citizens that we want them to be.
Right.
We only have a few more minutes, and I have one big question for you, and then I want to give you a chance to plug a couple of things because your organization's changing too. I mean, you started with OC, the OC schools, but you're moving to something else. But first off, did you have any aha moments in this? Did you have something where like kind of jumped out and you went, "Oh my gosh, that was totally unexpected"?
One of the aha moments was the unexpected trouble we had with IT.
Really?
And I thought that when we pushed this out there would be a lot of resistance from parents. Well, I am not allowing my kid to play more video games, right? There's that stereotypical picture we have in our head of that. And I thought for sure we would see more pushback from an organized version of what parents seem to not want their kids necessarily to do. Or maybe they do, what do I know? But we didn't get that. What we got was pushback from our IT directors around the county. Our county represents 27 school districts.
Okay.
And each one has their own IT department. And, we had like 10 or 12 of those districts involved in our league. And we met with them. And these IT directors, men and women, they're gamers. And they sat around the table, oh my gosh, if this had existed when I was in high school, I would have participated. However, you're causing all sorts of problems with us and our IT mechanisms. As far as, we can't just whitelist Twitch or Discord. We can't make that happen. Discord, you can actually share files behind the scenes, and that gets around some of our policies and procedures in regards to filtering content. And some districts were easier to work with, and some, they spent a week over the holidays rewriting and recoding all of the things that they do so they could allow students to be able to properly log in and use League of Legends website without having other admin accesses to other areas of their infrastructure. So that, I had no idea that was going to be what it was, but we really have to be mindful of that. I mean, there are privacy laws involved that we have to be mindful of. As far as sharing of student data, those things we have to keep out in front of us, and we have to really support our districts. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a different culture within their district and a different board with different requirements, and that I did not expect. And that's kind of a weird aha, but that means something to me because these are the real people working in the real school districts, and kids are trying to participate and they want to support them. But how do they do that in a way that doesn't jeopardize big time investments that they have in technology, and of course violate laws?
Yeah, absolutely. And as somebody who in the past I was a tech director for a lot of small school districts, where it was usually I was having the conversation with myself because there was no other tech support or anything. I understand how you want to build systems, and then all of a sudden somebody says, well, we want you to open up all of these things. And it can create a level of havoc because a lot of people just say, well, just make it why can't I just go to this?
Right, yeah.
And it's like, so I guess the takeaway from this is, as you're thinking about this, have those close conversations with your IT department. And I will say here in Racine, I have to give much accolades to our IT department because they did go through and create specific accounts that gave kids access to things. They did have to do network reconfiguration to allow kids certain access. And a lot of it was built on an honor system too, where we aren't saying to kids you're criminals, but we're saying we're giving you this access, this privilege, now please respect that. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, is a code of conduct. So now, your organization has, or I shouldn't say Orange County Schools hasn't changed, but your Orange County Esports organization has changed and morphed into something much larger. What is that, and can you share that with everybody?
Yeah, we started as the Orange County High School Esports League, right? OCHESEL, right? So that's who we were. But that was our first year, and we worked just with the California Orange County schools, just to try to get this off the ground and see if it would actually work. But as you can imagine, this became more interesting to more people around the country. And part of what I do and what the Samuel Lay Foundation does is they fund STEM networks around the country, and through the STEM Funders Network. And there's 68 STEM communities, and we start talking to them about it, and people around the country are getting involved. The press starts to get involved, and now we want to push beyond Orange County here in our second year. We were just going to kind of go up and down the state of California, but now we're heavily invested with interest in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida,
Wisconsin.
Illinois. We've heard from all over the country, and so we couldn't really just call ourselves the Orange County High School Esports League anymore. So we've rebranded ourselves as the North America Scholastic Esports Federation, which sounds like we should have like a starship or something when you're part of a federation. But we now are kind of go through that North American reach with what we do, and we're trying to offer our free services all around the country for those who are interested, who want to be empowered by this, or who've been looking at the possibility of adding esports to their campuses but didn't really have the resources to do that. We're building all of these digital toolkits that help create these clubs. We're building digital toolkits to help adults manage the clubs as general managers. We have these workshops that help the different interests around esports, whether it's shoutcasting or game analytics. We're putting those together, all just so those who are interested have more opportunities to learn more about it in a more structured way. That's
that, and the fact that you have said this is free, right? This is free for anybody to. Free. That's fantastic, and a lot of that. I mean, UCI research-based, Samuli Foundation backed, Orange County vetted resources.
Yes,
that's
100%. Yes, and again, it's all about that. The Samuel Lay Foundation and their philanthropy has been funding this at great cost. But they believe in it, and they will continue to believe in it as long as we're seeing results and as long as we're seeing kids enjoying and getting something out of it.
Fantastic. And the last thing.
And so the website for us now is it's esportsfed.org. And if you go on that website, all of those resources we talked about are on there. If you want to join, if you want to activate your club, that's kind of the first step. You start a club, and then from there you can participate in our leagues. You can get the curriculum. You can get all those supports. That's at esportsfed.org.
And I'll have all the links to this in our show notes here as well. And then, of course, across the bottom, there will be the link as well, too, so people can see that who are watching this on YouTube. And the final thing is South by Southwest is coming up in March. And it's not just one of those things where you can put in a proposal and they say, yay, you're accepted or not. I guess this is your opportunity to kind of pitch your proposals for South by Southwest again. It's a great conference. I hear it's going to be my first time attending this year, and I hope to present myself. So what is it you're looking to present at South by Southwest? And again, I'll have links to the panel picker so that people can vote for it. But what are you trying to present this time?
Well, first of all, James, we'd love to see you down there. I'd love to be able to meet up with you in person.
Yeah.
We have a few panels. We have one part of the South by Southwest EDU workshop called Make It Theirs, which is a designing high school esports clubs offering. So hopefully everybody will go in and vote for that one. We also have one called Distraction Education. Esports as a learning tool. That's in a South by Southwest EDU panel. And we have another one called GG, which is good game. GG Students, How Esports Changes Education, which is a South by Southwest gaming panel. So we have those ones up there, and we're hoping to get a lot of interest and a lot of votes for those, so we can see you down there in Austin.
Yep, I will be there for the EDU portion. I will not be there for the other artsy, futuristic one. So,
right.
All right, Tom Turner, Orange County Schools, thank you so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Sure, I appreciate the time and look forward to working with you and everybody else around the country on this esports movement.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, James.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JIMOHAGAN. And through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement at www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAO Esports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.